Evening, everyone. Jeff, are we good to go? Yeah, thank you. Right, good evening, everybody. Welcome to tonight's Licensing and Public Protection Committee meeting for Newcastle Underlying Borough Council. We're all old hands here tonight, so I don't need to say too much, but obviously what we'll say is you all know that the meeting is being recorded and will be put on the council website. I'd just ask members to just remember to use their microphones when speaking so that it gets picked up by the recording. And as per normal, I've been advised there is no fire drills tonight. So should the alarm sound, please follow all the members of staff's directions. Just ask that all mobile phones are on silent or switched off as well. As per normal, the meeting is running in two separate sections. So we're going to start tonight with the licensing committee, and then we'll follow that by the protection. So the first part of the agenda is the apologies. I have apologies from Councillor Heatham, Councillor Downs and Councillor Barbara. Are there any more apologies?
Councillor Parker.
Councillor Parker. Thank you. Second on the agenda then is the declaration of interest for the licensing matters. Do we have any declarations of interest this evening? Thank you very much. Item 3 then on the meeting on the agenda is the minutes of the previous meeting. Are we happy to approve those as a true record of the meeting? Yep, thank you very much. Item 5 on the agenda. Oh, I've just done that, sorry. Item 4, sorry, I'm moving quickly on. So item 4 of the agenda is the report on Martin's Law, which is going to be presented by Gareth Harvey. So Gareth, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. The purpose of this report is to update the Licensing and Public Protection Committee on the Terrorism Protection of Premises Act 2025, known as Martin's Law. This law was brought in to play in response to the Manchester Arena inquiry, which was a public inquiry into the terrorist attack at Manchester Arena in 2017. The inquiry examined security arrangements, the emergency response, and whether the attack could have been prevented. This piece of legislation follows the Arena inquiry and is intended to strengthen public protection of qualifying premises and events. It requires those responsible for qualifying premises, which is a key term in the legislation, and events to consider, prepare for and respond to the risk of terrorist attacks. Martin's Law received royal assent in April 2025 and is likely to come into effect after a lead-in period of 2 years around April 2027. The legislation applies nationally and is not limited to just licensed premises. In terms of the capacity thresholds, premises below 200 people are generally going to be outside the scope of this legislation. Between 200 and 799 people will fall within the standard tier, and 800 or more will fall within the enhanced tier. Responsible persons will need to notify qualifying premises and events to the Security Industry Authority, who will be the enforcement authority. For standard tier premises, they will need appropriate public protection procedures, including evacuation, lockdown, and communication arrangements. Those premises that are enhanced tier with enhanced duties will be larger premises events, which will have additional requirements around monitoring, movement of people, physical security, and information security. The council's role is not expected to be the regulator, so direct resource implications for the council are likely to be low. The council may still be affected through its own assets, premises and events, and through matters coming before committee or subcommittee. The Act will require separate licensing plans, one detailed plan for responsible authorities, and one public-facing plan with sensitive security information removed. Members are asked to note the contents of the report, to be aware of the forthcoming legislation, the likely impacts on local premises and events, and the council's potential role in signposting operators to guidance and resources. This is a preparation and awareness issue for the council rather than a new direct regulatory function for the licence authority. Thank you, Chair. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Gareth. So I'm going to put it out to the room. Does anybody have any questions? Councillor Wheeldon.
One of the problems with the entire act, and it's always when something's been rushed through to counter something from a public relations point of view from everything else, as well as making everything better. There always follows a raft of regulations which are based on when people haven't got it quite right post-act. And you're nodding because you know that that's so. What worries me is it seems to be that we're asking people who are holding an event at a venue to police themselves without the police being involved. And that throws up all sorts of things that worry me, like skills of those people involved who are going to do that. What training are they going to be given? The fact that if that training is going to be given, there's going to be need to be more people who are vigilant and have the skills to carry out what's required by the Act. That's then going to put up the cost of whatever events are held. And I'm just wondering how much feedback has been given before these regulations come into effect post-Act approval. How much feedback, how much consultation has been done? Have we got any data that tells us how much feedback has been given on those particular circumstances?
Thank you. I'll try to answer that question the best I can. I think like any...
I'm sorry, I'm not being mischievous. It's just as I'm looking at it, I'm thinking, oh, if I was doing that, who's going to do this? Who's going to do that? Are they skilled? You know, it's just stuff that's, if I was doing it, I would worry about.
Absolutely, they're good questions. I think a lot of the detail that we're going to be looking for will come out in the near future with the regulations as they're reduced and the statutory guidance, etc. I think in terms of the Act, I think it would have gone through its usual sort of consultation period. They would consider the sort of impacts and things like any legislation. I haven't got those details in front of me, but I'm sure that would happen before this was given royal assent. And I think in terms of the obviously event organisers are meant to risk assess and produce safety plans anyway for general safety and fire precautions, etc. And this, I think, will be just an extra element where they can have to think about these aspects as part of the risk assessment.
I get that, and it was a tough question. I know you'll be limited on how much knowledge you've been given to be able to answer it. But when new legislation like this comes into effect, one of the things, because having read through it, it looks a tad rushed to me. My first question is, yes, that's great. It's wonderful. They're trying to right a potential wrong. So they're trying to be proactive before an event rather than reactive when something happens. Who's going to police this piece of legislation and how?
Yeah, thank you. I think in terms of the policing of this, we believe it's going to be the Security Industry Agency. So these plans will have to be submitted to that agency prior to an event, and they will be in charge of policing it. So that's why we haven't got a direct enforcement role. But the actual details of how that's going to happen and how much resource they've got and how they're going to do this, we're still awaiting those details. So they'll come out in the near future. It could be something we could provide a further update to the committee when we have that information.
Might I, Chair? I would just say that there's great chunks of the security industry that is not regulated. And if this is forced on people without some, and I don't think there's proper structure there yet, they're going to go for the cheapest option because at the end of the day, if they're putting an event on, they want to make money out of it. And I've been to MEN Arena loads of times. It doesn't matter how many little yellow coats are about. They don't know their chin from their elbow. And they're there to just guide people rather than as a security force. So that there's a whole new raft and industry going to have to be put in place to make this legislation effective. And I think it would be very good to see what consultation took place before this came into effect. I think that would be very helpful to the committee to look at. Do you think?
Yeah, Councillor Jelliman.
Yeah, I just want to add to what Councillor Wheeldon said, because the thing that worried me when I read it was the responsibility, the people who are responsible. And as Councillor Wheeldon's just said about the cost, and it's a little bit of a worry that you have an event and somebody goes, oh, by the way, it's you, that you've got to, and a very responsible position. Not so much when asked the question about the council having a responsible person when it's them, because that's a slightly different structure. But I just want to add that, you know, I can see those concerns, and that people then afterwards, it's, well, who was responsible for that? Well, I told you. Oh, well, so just want to register. That's not a question really, unless you want to answer.
Chair.
Yeah, of course.
Spot on, we're as one. The other thing, of course, is if we are licensing something as a council and we're letting it take place with, you know, may God bless all who sail in her, whatever it is that they're actually doing. If something goes wrong and it hasn't been policed properly and we've given our good wishes to them and something does go wrong, if I was taking something to court where I'd got to sort of plead for somebody's injuries or whatever, I would be starting to look at was the local authority culpable as well to some extent, and therefore dragged into the situation. The culpability shifts depending on how many involved. So I do think this legislation, whilst I think it's brilliant and it should be there, and it was horrendous what happened in Manchester, I just think it's been rushed for PR reasons and trying to get something out to console people rather than something to be as effective as it could be if it had been properly drafted with serious, you know, deep dive consultation. That's the only thing. I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm just saying it could be better.
Thank you. Gareth, did you want to respond?
Yeah. Just keep track of the various comments. I think absolutely we can find out more about the consultation process in this piece of legislation and provide the committee with a further update on that. So I know that would have taken place, and I think Matt will be able to provide a more substantive update on that. But we can certainly do that. I haven't got that in front of me, but we can do that. In terms of the burdens on the organisers, I get that point. I think any event organiser has a raft of legal duties anyway, in terms of health and safety and fire safety. They're responsible for the people attending the event. And I think this fills a gap where in what happened back in 2017, this element of obviously a potential terrorism act wasn't considered, wasn't a legal requirement. And I think it just introduced that extra element of safety planning for them to do that. And I think there will be further guidance provided to organisers and possibly training. But once we get those details, we can share that with the committee as well.
Yeah. Councillor Bailey, you have a question?
First off, I apologise for being late. Having spent 15, 16 years working in the security industry, why don't they just make it compulsory on councils, on people organising events, that all security have to be SIA licensed? Because I thought that was what the law said anyway.
Gareth, did you want to respond to that?
I was going to say, I believe that is the case for, sort of licensed, sort of security personnel. They do have to be licensed. And I think the security industry agency, they will now take on this new role of checking plans and that are submitted to them for these larger events. And I think it's possibly a new part of their role, which we're going to obviously wait to find out more about and we'll feed back to you. And as soon as we've got that information, we can provide that to you.
Give me just one sec. I've got Councillor Sparks, Councillor Jellyman, Councillor Wheeldon. You're okay now, yeah? So, Councillor Sparks?
Sorry, just a simple question. How many venues of a capacity greater than 800 people are there in the borough? Do we know?
I haven't got that information in front of me, unfortunately, but we can certainly do some analysis on that and try and bring that back to you.
Great, yeah. And how do we know how many between 200 and 799?
Same answer, unfortunately, but now we've got this detail, we'll start analysing what we've got in front of us.
Yeah.
To be able to bring that back to you.
Okay, thanks.
It's just worth everybody noting that this has been brought to the committee for information purposes. There is some great questions that obviously will go to Gareth and Nesta. Councillor Wheeldon.
Two things. It's been, come here. Two things. It's been brought for information. However, we're entitled to debate it and pull things out. That's why it's come to the committee, so that we can look at things and query and question them. As far as Councillor Sparks is concerned, how many things happen? For example, for the any do bit of a do that's on at Keele, it runs into hundreds sometimes. When we went for what's the thing where the sun goes? That's it. There was 2,000 people there. 1,999 until I arrived. There was 2,000 people there at the observatory. So there are quite a few times. If I refer you to 4.1, finance and resources, on page God knows whatever, 12. As licensing authorities are not the regulator, it's anticipated there will be very low resource implications. Now, that worries me intensely, because the minute you say low resource implications, it means you put no money where your mouth is, which makes you doubly culpable because you're not financing something that's demanded by law. And we used to get this in industry, in the aerospace industry, in marine power and things like that, where they were saying things like buy cheaper things instead of buy things cheaper. So the 4.1 worries me intensely.
Did you want to say anything?
Thank you, Chair. I'll just add to that, in terms of the reason why we've proposed that the financial implication will be low is because we won't be the enforcement authority, we'll be the security industry agency. So they will have to regulate this, they will have to assess the plans that's submitted and enforce that. We don't know the full details of how they're going to do that, and we will bring that back to you when we know more. But we directly won't have to enforce or regulate that part of the function. That's the reason why we've said it'll be minimal cost. We will signpost applicants and event organisers to this legislation and the legal requirements they have to follow, but we won't have to directly sort of take any action.
One final point, if that's the case, the fact that we're saying, yes, you can have this licence, we're going to have to be very careful on approval and what we're requiring and demanding of them to put in place when we're saying, yes, okay. There's going to have to be like a shopping list of what we demand that do. And like Councillor Bailey said, it might be that we require them to have a regulated little army of foot soldiers looking after people. Just a point. Thank you very much, Chair. Appreciate your indulgence.
Councillor Jellyman.
Yeah, just following on that, just to reiterate, we have had a situation recently where something had happened and no one would admit responsibility on quite a small scale. And on this scale, it just bothers me, this responsibility, overall responsibility. And I know it's all right written down, but if you're getting people who are not really trained properly up to the job, all that's got to be, you've got to have the structure there, and then the rest will hopefully. And the train, that's what I mean, the training that's what I meant by structure, Councillor Wheeldon, the training behind it. And we, as an authority, need to know exactly who that responsible person is. Not after the fact when the police are trying to find out, but we need to know.
Councillor Bailey.
What you've got to remember is security officers are not the police. They touch somebody, that's assault. They twist somebody's arm up the back, that's aggravated assault. They're not the panacea, you know.
But under this, we're trying to offload the police responsibility onto civilians who have some training effectively.
I mean, don't.
Yeah, I was just going to come in and say, obviously, these are new bits of legislation, and I think it was brought to you to, I suppose, provide you an awareness about the scheme. I think we all know about the terrible incident and the results that happened, but terrorism is something that affects, a lot of the premises that we deal with, and it is everybody's responsibility for some of that general awareness, but it's equally the people that organise some of these events. It's another string of those things that they need to have an awareness of, need to be able to manage, and need to take some responsibility for. And that's why there's a hierarchy in terms of the different scales of what's been proposed in the legislation. The bigger the event, the higher the controls ought to be, and a lighter touch for some of those. So it isn't something that we are going to regulate, but it was brought to you for that information and awareness, because when you do get some of the licensing hearings and things like that, there may be some reference to Martin's Law and some of the controls that they'll put in place or some of the procedures that they have, which is why we've tried to bring it as an information item, just so that when you see some of that in terms of Martin's Law, you'll have the appreciation of it and how it touches to the premises that we deal with and the premises that you'll be asked to do. So we won't have that direct involvement. We won't necessarily see the plans. We won't be asked to review them. But it's one of those associated bits of legislation that which will touch in terms of, licensing and public protection and some of the events that you have. So that's why we brought it. The devil's always in the detail. And obviously, as the, regulations and the guidance comes into fruition, that'll obviously evolve over time and it'll become more familiar. So hopefully over the next 12, 18 months, we'll get those. But it was really just to make you more aware that it's happening. You will start to see reference to it, and the whole title isn't given as it. It's always just referred to as Martin's Law. So it was just to try and give you that appreciation. And I think what we can try and commit to is when there is a further significant update, or we have any more of the regulations and some more details, we can bring a further information report back to you. But a lot of the things have already happened in terms of the consultation they've gone through. It's the public inquiries happened. So, we can't, although we can debate some of those things, we can't change the things that have happened. The regulations have come into force. But I think what we could say is, when there's a next significant update or the guidance comes out and there's something else that would be beneficial for you in looking in terms of licensed premises, then we can bring a further update, if that would be fair, Chair.
Yeah, Gareth, is there something else you want to add to that?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I would just add that in response to the points about the organisers, they do have very significant legal responsibilities. So, and small events often struggle with that. Like any event, the small events, we do tend to try and provide more guidance to them, signpost them. There's lots of good guidance on these things, and I'm sure that will happen in this case. But those people responsible do have very clear legal duties in the health safety law, and they should be well versed. That the large events usually are. And the only other point I was going to add was in terms of the if there were to be any failings in any of this, alongside other safety failings, if it was a licensed event, we have got the possible opportunity then to the police or others to review the licence and bring it in front of the committee in that way. So there is always that option available.
Just a final comment, and that's absolutely right. It's good that it's come to us. It's good that we've made comment on it. Hopefully now every single one of us, when we're on a panel that's deciding yes they can and no they can't, we'll have a greater awareness of all the pitfalls that each of us have made little notes of, and that will be at the back of our mind. So it was worth the commentary that we've all done.
Councillor Bailey, did you have anything else you wanted to? No. Does anybody else have any questions or comments they want to make? No? Okay, so if we're all happy to note the report that's just been put towards us, are we all happy with that? Yep. Okay, thank you very much. So we'll move on to item 5 on the agenda, which is the minutes of the licensing subcommittee held on the 15th of July. Are we happy to approve those as a true record of the meeting? Yes, thank you. Thank you very much. So there's no further reports for licensing. So that concludes the first part of the meeting. So we're now going to move on to the Public Protection Committee. Item 6 on the agenda is declaration of interest. Do we have any declarations of interest for this? No? Okay, thank you. Item 7 is the Air Quality Action Plan, which is going to be presented. I'm afraid it's the Gareth show tonight, Gareth. So this is going to be yourself again. So with you.
Thank you, Chair. I will try my best. The purpose of this report is to update the committee on our draft air quality action plan. In terms of where a local authority designates what's called an air quality management area, they are required legally to prepare a corresponding air quality action plan outlining the measures the council and partners are going to take to improve air quality in that area. We currently have one air quality management area in Newcastle under Lyme Town Centre. This action plan sets out how we will improve and maintain local air quality between 2026 and 2030 in line with the legal requirements specifically for this air quality management area we're talking about. In terms of the current position, air quality has improved across the borough, and we previously had 3 other air quality management areas that, following sustained compliance, we were able to revoke, and that was done in recent years. That now leaves us with the one remaining air quality management area that we're talking about. And this very much relates to historic nitrogen dioxide exceedances, which is often linked to road traffic and congestion. That's often the cause of these sorts of high levels. The main pollutant, like I said, is nitrogen dioxide, and this is affecting particularly around the town centre, the ring road and key access routes. Monitoring does show a downward trend, and the most recent results, which we'll talk about in the next agenda item, shows that actual area was in compliance last year in 2025. We're not able to revoke that yet because you have to have 3 years of continuous compliance, but it is a good sign that we've actually already brought that into compliance as we stand. Obviously, improving air quality is important for human health, and anything we do will reduce exposure to pollution and hopefully support better public health outcomes, particularly for children and older people and vulnerable groups. The main priorities of this action plan is to reduce and maintain nitrogen dioxide concentrations below the annual objective, which you'll see in the report. It supports practical, voluntary and affordable travel choices where realistic to help improve the air quality, and it prioritises reducing congestion, improve traffic flow and continue compliance with the air quality objectives. The plan does not introduce any punitive measures for the community or road users. Measures are grouped around transport planning, traffic management, public information, planning policy, environmental permits and travel alternatives. And a lot of this is obviously the responsibility of some of our partner agencies at the County Council, for example. Some of the examples in the action plan you will see are around continuing air quality monitoring, which we do each month, an annual reporting, which we'll talk about in the next agenda item. Hopefully a potential revocation of our management area if that compliance continues over that 3-year period. Using air quality input into plan decisions and developing guidance, traffic signal optimisation, managing congestion, all these sort of things our partners will be assisting with, along with bus service improvements and other infrastructure. In terms of the evidence, some work was carried out called source apportionment to try and establish what was the precise cause of some of the higher levels that we've seen in recent years. And that showed that diesel cars and light goods vehicles were the significant contributors to those nitrogen dioxide levels. So any measures focusing on reducing congestion, improving movement and supporting alternative transport options will help with this sort of measure. Delivery of this action plan depends very much on collaboration with our partner agencies at the County Council, public health partners, transport bodies, and obviously that's the discussion we've historically always had, and that will continue. Progress on this action plan will be reviewed annually through our council's annual status report, which will be talked about in more detail in the next agenda item. And any updates on implementation and monitoring results will be brought to you via that sort of annual update. The plan provides a proportionate, evidence-led route to maintaining and improving air quality and protecting public health. And it is recommended that the committee approve the report and provide comments as part of the consultation for the document. Approve that officers can commence the 28-day public consultation with then delegated authority for the chair and portfolio holder to approve submission of the to DEFRA of this action plan following that consultation period. And note that members will receive a final copy of the action plan in due course for information once it's been approved by DEFRA. Thank you, Chair. Open to any questions.
I'm going to say that as we stand it up. Councillor Linden.
If you go to, God, I think it was a bit ago. I highlighted all this with highlights and it's disappeared. So I'm on a wing and a prayer here. 4.2, I think. I'm focusing on 4.2s tonight. Okay. There we go. 2024 was a steering group set up. There's a heck of a lot of work done on this from then onwards. The question is just how much. Councillor Hutchison was then the chair of that steering group, and a lot of work was undertaken. I was just wondering if parking party politics, if anyone's seen a child gagging with asthma at school or students at university, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about and how they can be adversely affected. I'm just wondering how much liaison has taken place between the new portfolio holder and the chair, and since then, because there has been a change last May, we've got to be realistic about that. I just wouldn't like all that preparatory work to have been wasted and there've been no cross-fertilisation of ideas or input or transfer of what knowledge base was. It would seem a shame to waste all that. And I was just, the question is, has that happened? Do you think it should happen? I sort of do, because you don't waste information that's been hard sought. I'm just wondering if that's happened at all, please.
Thank you. Yes, I'll try to answer that question the best I can. In terms of the portfolio holder, they have been provided with updates and they've been updated on this report. I don't think anything's been wasted from that previous steering group. A lot of good work happened previously, which involved a lot of partner agencies and neighbouring local authorities, the county council, director of public health, etc. So all that work, this actual report is a culmination of all that work that's gone on previously. And I think in terms of the portfolio holder, we have provided updates and that will continue as part of this process. So I don't think any of that will be lost.
It's gone green. The reason I'm asking that is if you look at, I was talking to Nesta about this just before we started the meeting. If you look at the figures that we've got for Newcastle and Lyme, we are quidsing compared with the national figures. So we're doing something incredibly right. I wouldn't like to see us abandon all this aims for clean air, and, you know, net zero is a sort of utopian situation. But again, if anyone's seen the impact on people, we're doing really well. And it's so important for me that it isn't wasted. I'm asthmatic and I grab my little inhaler periodically. I can't walk up the butts without it. It's like my little comfort blanket. And anybody who's gasped for air will know how tough it can be. So I relish the thought of living in a cleaner air situation. We're not going to get clean air per se, but it would not be nice if we continued to give it our best shot. So thank you for what you're doing.
Thank you. Councillor Jelliman.
I'd just like to make an observation, really, that all that groundwork was done before, and none of these things do I disagree with, but I did find it interesting reading about NO2 and the particulates and all the rest of it, because I find it is my sort of bag, really. And then to read about planning that can be done to mitigate that. And it was interesting, every time I walk across here, I see where the new builds are and where the car park is being refurbished. Now, I'm not saying I'm against those developments, but I just I felt that I should make a comment when we're talking about information from the past. We've got apartments being built on that ring road, directly there. we know we want development, we know, but there's always got to be compromises. And amazingly, I've just been given a free membership at J2 because I live in a certain postcode in the town centre because of the health there, just as an aside. So it's just a comment that I found quite fascinating, that we're talking about 2024, we're talking about planning, it's in here about planning and planting trees and all the rest of it, and there's always compromises. And I think the air quality, what were we, 40.6 micrograms, we're going to reach compliance soon. We mustn't get confused between net zero, greenhouse gases and carbon and all of that. We are on NO2, we're on particulates 2.5 and 10. That's what we're looking at. And I think we're going the right way, and it's been brilliant, really. So it's just a comment for me, no discussion.
Thank you, Councillor Wheeldon.
Yeah, they might not be brother and sister, but they're probably cousins when you're talking about the net zero emissions and so on.
Yeah.
And as far as the building of the apartments in town centre, when I've been into that car park that had, God, what do they call it? Concrete cancer. Yeah, the number of cars revving up, driving round, down the ramp, up the ramp and so on. The emissions there was sort of fairly toxic if you were inside. If you're separating that and putting apartments there, but where people are more static, you're going to reduce it anyway to some effect, and you're flashing.
Yeah, sorry. Have our own little discussion here. Yeah, I agree totally. And I think living in that area and seeing the problems around the roundabouts where you've got the college and you've got all the university traffic and the queues that are there, it's no wonder that we're finding a problem. And hopefully when the new road is built across to Keele off the A53, that might alleviate some of that, just as it's done on Basford Bank, where the road going to Festival Park has alleviated there. So, let's jump in maybe and try to mitigate something while other things are evolving around it, I think. So.
Gareth.
A few points in response to that. So in terms of not losing the momentum of this, so if and hopefully when the management area is revoked, which hopefully will be in the near future, we are then legally obliged to produce an air quality strategy dealing with air quality matters for the whole borough. So it won't be sort of lost or forgotten. Even if we do manage to revoke that area, we will potentially bring in an air quality strategy in front of the committee and be consulted on in the future. So that will happen. The focus of this action plan is very much on public health and the impacts of that and preventative measures. And I think in terms of the plan, I'm not a planning expert, but I do know they do consider air quality and other impacts as part of the development. But I'd have to pass to my past planning colleagues to provide you with further details on that.
I may be able to come in and help a little bit in terms of the planning applications. Once you declare an air quality management area, it is a material consideration. So all the developments that happen within those areas, we actually ask for as part of the planning process that they produce a assessment of the impact of what they will add to the air quality in the area, and also how they would help to mitigate it. So it is part of the process. So if you put it in that we would equally say the same in terms of noise, if something was going to generate noise, we would look for an impact assessment, but we also ask for the same in terms of air quality. So the developments that have happened within the air quality management area in the town centre, they are part of the planning consideration, and they were put forward as part of the evidence in relation to those. And it's environmental health that independently assess those and would advise the planning committee in relation to them. So hopefully that can help you.
Yes, so if I can just sort of clarify. So this is for interest, really, for information. So the impact of the building is assessed upon the surroundings, and the impact of the surroundings is assessed.
Yeah. So
the people that live there.
Yeah, so if somebody,
Both
you know,
ways.
because one is you have to see what any development would add to the air
That's
quality,
right, yeah.
and there's a baseline level, and the baseline level is then what people would be exposed to. So you end up looking at it as a baseline, which is something that we assess, and then any potential additional impacts that would create for either the people living there or the surrounding areas. So those are the parameters we tend to look at, and those would come into some of the major developments that we have within the town centre or anywhere within the borough. There's things that we would look at is in terms of air quality, just to try and ensure that there isn't any further detriment to it. So that's part of some of the controls that we have, and there's some of the things that are detailed within the action plan that we continue to look at. Continuous any developments that we have is the same way as we would regulate any industry that we have and the pollution that they bring about. So they're all quite intrinsically linked, but we try and look at each of the individual parameters to try and maintain our position and to keep improving air quality for the reasons that we've all said and maintain the public health.
Okay. Anybody else got any comments? No. I just want to say, Councillor Wilden, your comments regarding the hard work that's been done in the past, I don't see any reason why it should be forgotten about and not used. It's yeah, no, and I agree. I think there's a lot of work that's been put into it. The team's done a great process in the past, and I think, as Gareth already said, you know, it'd be hard to allow that to disappear, because it's based in everything that we're doing now and going forward will be based on the foundations of that. So absolutely noted the comments you make, and fantastic. So if there's no more comments, we've got 3 areas that we just need to agree to that Gareth mentioned in his report. The first one is to approve the report and provide the comments as part of the consultation for the document. And obviously comments that made tonight have been documented as well. So is everybody happy to approve that? Yeah, thank you. The second part of that is to prove that the officers can commence on the 28-day public consultation with delegated authority to the chair and portfolio holder to approve submission to the Department for Environment, Food and Rural Affairs, DEFRA, following the consultation. Is everybody happy to approve that? Yeah, thank you. And the final one is to note that members will receive a final copy of the action plan in due course with all the information following the approval of DEFRA. So is everybody happy with that? Yeah, Councillor Leland?
Ask one question about that. When we're looking at approval of it, will it be for presentation for information, or will it be for to enable us to ask questions and push it a little further to get greater responses? Because you'll have had the external consultation, and by us being a committee, we need to be involved in the consultation process, I would have thought as well.
Yeah, Gareth?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I think obviously this report is part of the consultation. So any comments you've made tonight, we will consider, and you can also add further comments during the public consultation that will take place during the 28 days. When that gets submitted to DEFRA, that will very much be a final draft report. DEFRA may have comments and things we may need to address, but at that point, that will be the end part of the report. And what we will bring back to you will be the final version once it's been through all those different steps and processes. So this is your chance to make comments and anything you would like to do as part of the current consultation.
I was just like to clarify, it's us making input to the external consultation so that we have an opportunity to see it and then comment on it, which then becomes part of the consultative process. Is that right, Gareth?
Yes. This report is part of that. What you've got is the appendix, is the final draft. A lot of work's been put into that. A lot of consultation already with our partners and with the steering group that kicked this off. But this is your chance to add any extra comments and review it as part of the wider process. At that point, then we have to close it down. We will reflect those comments, action any that are needed into the final version of the report. That will then be uploaded to DEFRA, subject to chairs and portfolio holders' approval. And then we will seek any comments DEFRA may want to make from their experts.
Thank you, Gareth. Does anybody else have any comments? No? Okay, thank you for that, Gareth. So that should move us on to, don't go there, Gareth, because it's you again. It's going to move us on to item 8 on the agenda, which is the Air Quality Annual Status Report.
Thank you, Chair. I hope you're not going to get sick of my voice. I will try my best.
Sorry, Gareth, they're just trying to find what page it's on.
That's fine.
Yeah.
73, I believe.
73. Yeah. Yeah, Gareth, do you want to?
Yep, thank you, Chair. So this report is to bring to the attention of the committee our 2026 draft annual status report on air quality, which is something I referred to in the previous agenda item. This annual status report is a legal requirement for the council to make an annual report on its local air quality. Where any parameters are found to fail, we have to declare an air quality management area, which is what we just discussed, and produce an action plan. But this report is very much the high level overall summary of air quality in Newcastle. And the key thing is this relates to data for the calendar year of 2025. Although it's this year's report, it's looking back at the 12 months data, January to December last year. If you look into the report, you'll see that there was very good compliance found last year. No monitoring location exceeded the annual mean nitrogen dioxide objective of 40 micrograms last year. All results were more than 10% below the national objective, which is good news. The former air quality management areas have been revoked, which is what I referred to earlier, and that was following sustained compliance of these measures over a number of years. And that process has now been carried out. And obviously, we've discussed about the Newcastle Town Centre, Newcastle and Lime Town Centre. That air quality management area still remains in force. Although it did achieve compliance last year in 2025, it was below the required level. And we need to see 3 years of that compliance, at which point we will be able to look to revoke that air quality management area. In terms of PM particulate matter 2.5, so these are the very small particulates which can have serious health consequences. These are not directly monitored by the council at the moment, but we use DEFRA background data, and they estimate that the levels remain low across the borough compared to other areas, which is good news. There's obviously some elements in the report about the health impacts and the importance of air quality, which you'll be able to read. In terms of our priorities, we will maintain compliance with the national objectives through continued monitoring. We're going to gather evidence for future revocation of that management area, hopefully in the near future. And we will address these emissions through transport planning and regulatory measures, which we've just talked through as well, which will support wider public health and economic benefits. In terms of financial implications, there's no additional funding required. The work on this annual status report and what we do each year is carried out within existing budgets by our environmental protection team. They do a lot of work on this to put this report together, and that's something which we do as part of our legal requirements. And obviously, in terms of legal implications, this report fulfills our statutory duties under Part 4 of the Environment Act 1995. It's recommended the committee note the 2026 Air Quality Annual Status Report and authorise its submission to DEFRA, which is the next step we have to follow once we've brought it to your attention and sought approval. Thank you, Chair. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Gareth. Do you have any questions for Gareth? Councillor Wheeldon?
I really am the pain tonight. I apologise, but it shows that I've read the papers. If we go to page 84, and you mentioned DEFRA a number of times, DEFRA is not something that I've come across. Can I just ask that we're vigilant in looking at it, because the only government agency that I've come across to date has been the Environment Agency, who, for want of a better phrase, I half wanted to, as an agency, to club them to death because they were just so ineffective when we were dealing with Wally's Quarry. They caused more harm, being more lazy, being more lackadaisical, being more obstructive than ever. So where it says, in addition, the Environment Agency is statutorily responsible for the regulation, instead of being a comfort to me, it fills me with abject horror, and I worry about it. So all that I would say is, can we be as vigilant as possible with any government agency like the Environment Agency or DEFRA, because they don't have the best track record in the world.
Gareth, did you want to say anything to that?
Yes, thank you, Joe. I was just going to say that obviously the Environment Agency is the enforcement arm executive of DEFRA. They report to them, and obviously DEFRA, we have to report to them as a local authority, as they're the civil service department responsible for, amongst other things, air quality and contamination and contaminated land, etc. That's how it's set up. But obviously, yes, it's right for the committee to be aware of how this is set up.
Councillor Jellyman.
Yes, sorry about this, Councillor Wheeldon, but I do absolutely agree because I've got no confidence in them either. So I just wanted that to be noted too, because whenever I've, particularly over Wally's Quarry, that, you know, when that was first starting and we were reporting things way back sort of before COVID, really, and I probably was one of the first ones on the phone ringing up, and you just thought the Environment Agency and DEFRA and the whole thing, you don't get a lot of comfort. So.
Does anybody else have any comments that you'd like to make? No? Gareth, is there anything else you'd like to finish on?
Obviously, the Environment Agency do regulate a number of sites in Newcastle, which we know about. You've just mentioned one. They do regulate and license a number of other sort of waste transfer sites, etc. We do try and work closely with them, and we report incidents to them and try and liaise with them, and that continues. But obviously, they are responsible for their premises they license or permit. So that will continue, that close working, and we will constantly liaise with them whenever there's issues that cross over between those sites.
Okay. I found, having worked with government agencies in the past, not necessarily the Environment Agency, although I came across the representatives when we had the Wally's Quarry public inquiry. Whilst you say you liaise with them and talk to them and that sort of thing, and they're going to do this and they're going to do that and report back with them because they are notoriously reluctant to be proactive, it's sometimes helpful to get, when are you going to do it? What date's your finish time? What's the outcome? And you have to be, and I don't mean to teach you your job because you're brilliant at it and you always answer all my questions, as does Nesta. It's just that with them, they are a tad underwhelming in you know, prompt response. So putting timelines and restrictions on them is important, I think.
Katie Hume.
I'd like to just say that I have no confidence whatsoever in the Environment Agency, nor have I ever done through the whole campaign. I was actively involved throughout the Stop the Stink campaign and still feel that nothing has been done and we're still not getting answers as to what is actually in that landfill site. Thank you.
Anybody else have any more comments? Gareth, is there anything else you wish to finish on?
I was just going to say, in terms of the Environment Agency, they're obviously a national regulator that aren't answerable to us directly, so it is difficult, but we do have those liaison lines and contacts that we will continue to use, and I think that is something which our teams are used to doing, and we obviously will take on board the points about setting sort of targets and deadlines and, you know, that sort of thing. Absolutely, we do that and we'll continue to do that. Thank you.
What it does is highlight when they haven't achieved something. And you're putting them on the line, and you're giving yourself a track record of evidences of non-performance, so then you can do something about it.
One last comment. Did anybody watch the programme called Buried yesterday? And I think that answers some of the issues that we may have in Wally's Quarry in the future.
Okay, so just to finalise item 8 on the agenda, is the committee happy to receive the notes of the 2026 Air Quality Status Report and authorise its submission to the Department of DEFRA? If I can have a hands of approval, please. Anybody against? Anybody abstaining? There we go then. Okay. So item 9 on the agenda is the minutes from the Public Protection Subcommittee held on the 1st of July. Are we happy to approve those as a true record? Anybody? Bear with me.
Sorry, Chair, I've lost all my notes.
Okay.
The minutes of the subcommittee on page 213.
Oh, you're done. Oh, God, I chaired it. They must be wondering.
So would you like to accept them, Councillor Wielden? Okay. Okay, so we have not been given any urgent business, but just before we conclude, I just want to make everybody aware that the next licensing committee will be on the 20th of October. Thank you, everybody, for attending. And thank you, Anne-Marie. Been very quiet there. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. That concludes tonight's licensing committee meeting.
Thank you all. Bye. Right, Mum's gonna go to bed.